we doing this morning? It's been a couple weeks. Been a couple crazy weeks. I've been kind of busy with a lot of things. We're surviving, but I mean, it's a tough time right now. Politics is just crazy. The divide is so real and asinine. The disconnected rise of nationalism, which disconnects you from your human heritage. It's so rooted in fucking stupidity. And the Trump troller who keeps posting all my videos. I mean, dude, I don't know what you're trying to accomplish here, but you're, aside from looking like an idiot, you ain't doing shit. I mean, you ain't doing shit. Following conservative nationalist politics and social issues in the most powerful election on the planet just shows you that you're a fucking sheep, man. You don't have any concept of the very principles that you think you're so ardently supporting. And I'll be honest, I don't have a problem with people with fiscal conservative viewpoints. Social conservative viewpoints, I just find to be your choice. Keep them the fuck out of politics. It's that simple. Politics are about the regulation of economics within a territory, and let's keep them that. Let's not regulate women's bodies and people's sexualities and religious viewpoints, and let's keep religion the fuck out of its separation of church and state. But I mean, the conservative right's viewpoints are so against the agenda and the benefit of most of its base that without these social viewpoints, they would have no base. Because no one who lives in a trailer park and votes for red is doing it for fiscal reasons. And if you are, you're a fucking idiot. I mean, it's I just get so tired of, and of course, the assassination attempt. It's that's ugly shit, man. No political leader should be exposed to such a. And I mean, I'm not going to go any deeper on it than that, but I mean, it's just, these are troubled times, and I suppose all times in history kind of are. But all that being said, I've been working a lot on my music with my own band, composing and writing, and that songs just coming out of me left and right. And that's the place where you talk about politics, social issues, and your viewpoints, is in fucking music. And so it's funny when I talk about music and history and the literate translation of the history that this music is unfolding, how it makes so many people's hair bristle and stand up on end. I'm like, what the fuck, are you stupid? Does it take Rage Against the Machine explaining to you what they're feeling and expressing for you to recognize that music as being political? I mean, there's so many people on the right who beef with me talking about the message in this music that we call jazz. And it's funny because I've never had a jazz musician counter my viewpoints. I've never had a black American counter my viewpoints. It's just always white conservative Americans who think they know something about their, I don't know. We're all entitled to our opinions. That's part of what freedom means. But that freedom should also extend to the trans community, the gay community, the black and Latino communities. I mean, it's funny how the people who celebrate and champion freedom so much are the first ones to want to regulate people's freedoms. Abortion. What about that word freedom all over your fucking pickup truck, you moron? Let a woman, her family, and her doctor decide that. And as far as their judgment, let that be their concern. Move on with your own fucking business. So much of this conservative base in America that talks about freedom as a catchphrase. The freedom they're really fighting for and championing is the freedom for guns to be sold to anyone at any time, and for the rich to operate without the hindrance of government. And the elite corporate base, industrial base in this country has convinced you that government is your enemy, when government is their enemy. And the fact that you fear big government but don't fear big corporations makes you a fucking sheep. Makes you one of the victims of one of the greatest conspiracies in the history of this planet. Big business is the enemy. The rich have always been the enemy of the poor, not government. Government is there in place to regulate what big business does. Therefore, big business does not like big government. And you have fallen hook, line, and sinker for the government's out to get you bullshit. You're a fucking moron. I can't stand how stupid you have to be to not see that elite corporate interests manipulate politics. And they're the ones that don't want big government overseeing who they hire, what they pay them, what resources they use, what environments they destroy, how many safety regulations they have to put in place, do they have to pay overtime, all that stuff that the unions and the labor movement and the people on the left fought for that you benefit from. Government facilitated that. The elite are chopping away at government to remove those economic hindrances from their agendas, and they convince you that, oh yeah, government, they've got some conspiracy to get you, when government is your tool, government is your agent, government is there to protect you. It is working for you, and you've allowed it to be manipulated and twisted into this, the government has some conspiracy that's going to control the American people. The government doesn't have enough unity to put a paper bag on an onion. It's it's so confusing, it's so paralyzing, and so few of the people who want to debate it really even understand the concepts and precepts and principles that are underlying the labor movement versus the wealth of the industrialists, how that unfolded in the last 120 years, and how that affects your life today. Thinking about waving a flag and some fireworks, that's not patriotism. Understanding democratic process and economic principles and having a vote that matters, not just being principled about something that your church told you or your stupid media channel told you. I don't even watch media. I really don't. I just think about basic underlying ideology and apply that to my principles. And there's no propagated viewpoints in what I'm saying. I'm not coming from some channel's viewpoint or some party's viewpoint. I'm a Canadian citizen. Remember that. I don't have a vested interest in either side. I have a vested interest in the principles and ideologies that should govern the democratic process that the corporate elite have totally destroyed. So, moving on. My music has been covering a lot of that stuff, and the songs have just been coming out of me left and right. I mean, I think I've got 35 songs written right now in the last 6-8 months. And I'm writing bass lines and drum lines and guitar and keyboard lines and singing and writing lyrics. And I mean, I have a couple bandmates that help me flesh them out. But it's been a very productive, creative process, which has unhinged my jazz listening time. Because I'm so in my own headspace, writing and composing and thinking and having these songs run through my head and trying to figure out how I want to produce them, what kind of tempos I want to use. I mean, there's always this process in my head right now with these songs that doesn't allow me to have as much time to listen to jazz. Therefore, I'm not making as many episodes. I'll get back into a deeper jazz channel at some point, without any doubt. Jazz is still one of the underlying fundamental joys of my life. It's one of the founding precepts of my consciousness and my approach to my own blessed existence. This notion that white America's under attack and they're being replaced, I mean, you're still an entitled, privileged motherfucker. You still don't have to understand how it feels to be a minority, how it feels to be watched, how it feels to be having a target on your back or your head every time you walk out the door. Jazz is an expression of that. And the fact that you can listen to that with your fucking conservative viewpoints and not recognize that you're actually listening to the music celebrating resistance against tyranny, which as a patriot you should be representing that, because your founding fathers resisted the tyranny of the British. They were terrorists in the eyes of the British, fighting for the freedom of their own choice and their own lifestyle, their own economic interests. And if you think that the elite destroying the government process in this country is going to make your life standard better, as you get less healthcare and less education, and the infrastructure of bridges and roads and highways and plumbing and all that stuff deteriorates, you're a fucking moron. Boom, done. I mean, look at Norway, look at Iceland, look at Denmark. But you don't have the international viewpoint to see how those places live, how their standards of living have surpassed ours. You don't have any grasp of the international community when you're such a strong nationalist. And so therefore you don't have the scope to grasp how underprivileged you're allowing yourself to become by allowing the right and the conservative corporate base to undermine your rights and privileges as an individual within this country in a democratic process. You don't have the footing or the grounding to stand on. You don't understand what the corporate right are attempting to do. They want to operate unfettered by government, and they're needing your vote to allow that to happen. And the fact that so many in this country do not see it is an absolute example of how undereducated we have become, how brainwashed we are, how disconnected from the global community we've become, and how much we're victims of our own supposed freedom. Shame. I just spent a couple days in Chicago. I had to get away, and it was so wonderful to be around the LGBT community on the north side in Andersonville and Edgewater, and to be around open-minded people and diversity, and to bump into Russians and people from Latvia and people from England and people from I met people from all over the world in my couple days there, just in coffee shops and restaurants, and people of all different sexual proclivities, and the freedom to operate and function in such a wonderful, safe, and an inclusive environment. That's freedom. To live in the repression of a small town, fear-mongered state of mind, where you're afraid of every group on the planet, and you think that clutching that AR-15 makes you free. Fear is not freedom. It's the opposite of freedom. I didn't even plan on going down that road, but it's just kind of where my head's had been with all the politics going on. And I mean, the assassination and the election looming. It's, and again, there's been a few people commenting and posting, if you don't like the fucking politics, watch a different channel. I don't give a fuck. I mean, seriously, if you have a strong right conservative viewpoint here in America, and it's not a fiscal viewpoint, go fuck yourself. I don't give a shit. You're an idiot. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't have the patience for it. I don't give a fuck. This music that we're talking about is viewed and based and lives in social progress, liberal viewpoints, tolerance towards others. And in fact, our boy Jesus, he was a socialist. He hung out with the lesser well-to-dos. I mean, it's... So, Trump, loco, whatever the fuck you are, dude, stop commenting. I don't really give a fuck about your stupid viewpoints. You're destroying the future of this country, allowing the rich to manipulate more of our policies. And if you think that benefits you in any way, you're dumber than you think you are. And if you think that the left are just some agenda to undermine male individuality and to overrun this country with minorities, and I mean, that's propaganda. Goebbels would be proud of the shit that Fox News and the right-wing media perpetuates to fearmonger people who don't have exposure to diversity in their life because their minds are so small and they live in such a cloud of fear and don't have any exposure to anything different. So everything that's outside of their bubble, they're terrified of. That's propaganda. That's exactly what it looks like. Put on your boots and start goose-stepping, motherfuckers. I mean, seriously, it's... Listen to some Gene Krupa right now. Chicago, drummer supreme. Great swing stuff. Of course, he played with Benny Goodman for a long time. We're going to try to talk jazz here for the next 10 minutes. Krupa was a fantastic player, a showman to the supreme level. And one of the first drummers that really put the drummer front and center at times. I mean, they were kind of always just a background instrument in the swing bands of the 20s and the 30s. And I mean, it wasn't really until Krupa comes along, largely in Goodman's band, where the drummer becomes this showpiece and this guy who's going to do sensational solos, and then Buddy Rich kind of even ups that a little bit, I think. But Louis Bellson comes along, and a few other players of that era were just fantastic showmen. But it's really Krupa that kind of opens the door, and Krupa was a fantastic, very skilled player. He, of course, branches off from Goodman in late 40s, early 50s. I think he might appear with Goodman at times still after that, but he has a string of successful recordings for Columbia. He does a great string of recordings for Norman Granz, some in the 10-inch era. I think some even go into the LP era, if I recall. And Krupa's a real stalwart of the swing era, even after the swing era goes into decline. He's still swinging hard. And if anybody ever wants to know what swing really is, and not the saccharine swing of Glenn Miller or Paul Whiteman, but what swing music is, Basie and Ellington are always great places to go. But I mean, for a mainstream, accessible, easy to find example of how swing can move you and rock your socks off, Sing, Sing, Sing. Which, if I think it might have been a Fletcher Henderson arrangement originally, but that version with Goodman with Krupa, Sing, Sing, Sing is just, it's got all the elements that modern dance music and electronic music, the swelling, the movement, the sound, the sonics, the range of dBs from the lowest frequencies to the upper frequencies and the counter modal movements. Sing, Sing, Sing is just an absolutely compulsive, driving, sonic piece of oral ecstasy. It's there's a lot of versions of it, but I mean, the Goodman Krupa stuff is really the version that you probably want to seek out, and it shows you what swing music is capable of. And of course, I mean, Jumping Out the Woodside by Basie is one of my favorite swing pieces ever, and that goes back to the late 20s, early 30s, if I recall, 31 maybe. And I jump, I mean, that swings so hard in such a minimal way. I mean, that's part of the essence of what Basie brings to the table, is that minimalism, which James Brown saw and institutes in all the funk of the 60s into the 70s. Sexy, I mean, when you think about Sex Machine and Hot Pants and all those great Brown singles from the 60s into the 70s, Funky Drummer, the minimalism is shocking. And when you play them at a low volume, they're almost incomprehensible and almost disappear. But when you turn that volume up, the volume will fill some of those spaces. And the minimalism allows each part of the groove, the rhythm, the guitar, the bass, the drum, the horn, they all kind of fill little spaces, and it creates these patterns that undulate, and that's what the funk is. And that's what great swing music does as well. It really uses minimalism to fill those spaces and to undulate and to make movement and repetition. And that's obviously the core of what dance music is. From disco to house to techno to EDM to dubstep, those foundations are all rooted in swing music, in black music, in jazz music, and it's a fundamental part of what dance music is. And it's not really driven by lyrics. It's not really driven by socially conscious messages, although they can be in there, but they're often very subtle. It's driven by space, compulsion, movement, open areas that can breathe, and pattern. And the pattern and the repetitious nature of the pattern is a sexual pattern. That's what dance is. It's an artistic expression of sexuality through music and sound and rhythm and pulse. I mean, you can't separate dance from sexuality. They're very much interwoven fabrics. And it's such an expression of joy. It's such an expression of candy that you can't remove from my life. you can not allow me to have the mansion, you can take away my chance even to get a nice car, but that candy, that sex, that's a foundation of joy that the black experience was rooted in. And the way they often undulated that with the fabric of spirituality and sexuality. I mean, Al Green, there's so many, Ray Charles, there's so many examples of the sexuality and spirituality being undulated to the point of where it was hard to tell, am I praising my Savior or am I praising that sweet vagina? And that's one of the real fun things about this music. Mentioning Norman Granz a bit ago, where Krupa does some fine recordings, I finally found the last David Stone Martin artwork for Clef Norgran Verve that I didn't have. And I had the music already as the Verve title 8130, but I didn't have the Norgran 1039. And they gave the Verve title a different cover, a kind of more modernized 56 cover when they reissued it on the Verve label. But this original cover had eluded me. It's an expensive record. It's often for well over $100. And I found this one finally for a good price. Music with Feeling by the great Ben Webster. A fantastic DSM cover. What's interesting is it's Webster playing with strings, which of course Parker and Clifford Brown really kind of brought that to the fore, and everyone was doing it from Cannonball Adderley. I mean, it was kind of just, everyone made a record with strings. And Webster here, who's a giant of a man with the saxophone in his mouth, he's shown with a violin under his arm, which is kind of interesting. Again, a very minimal line drawing by the great David Stone Martin. And this was the last DSM cover that I did not have. And I was kind of waiting to find one that was going to be affordable. And the vinyl is, I mean, very good plus. The cover is not in perfect shape. There's some tape residue on the top. But all the same, I have the music in a better version on Verve 8130, but now I have this cover as well. And it kind of filled out the last of the David Stone Martin covers. I really kind of wanted this one for a while. And again, I just don't have the money right now to splurge on a $100 record. So I found that, I think, for $40, and I was like pretty thrilled about that. And then one other piece I got that was a Bud Powell composition for Norgran in probably 55, maybe 56. And again, I only had the Verve 8185 version of this, which again had a different cover. And this isn't a DSM cover, it's just a photograph of the great Bud Powell. And you have Bud Powell here kind of still at the apex of his abilities in his career. He works for Blue Note and Norman Granz a lot in this period. He shows up in various other labels like RCA. He's in a myriad of places. But he's himself in Brunswick, which is an RCA affiliate. A great Norman Granz Norgran title number 1017. And Powell is a tragic figure in jazz history. Not the best cover, but again, it was one I didn't want to pay a lot for because I had the music otherwise. And I found that for pretty cheap, actually. And I was thrilled to kind of add that to fill up my Norgran section. And again, I already had the music, but it's just nice to have some of that other, those details kind of add to my comprehension of that history even better. And the more titles you have in a sequence, the more you really know that history. And there's probably no label more convoluted or tough to really get a grasp on than the Norman Granz body of work with Clef, Norgran, and Verve. But Powell was such a tragic figure, beat by the police several times, put in mental hospitals. I mean, just the sadness of the Powell story encapsulates much of the tragedy that is Black America under the tyranny and thumb of that oppression, and how he was beaten by the police multiple times, and how it caused brain damage, and how they gave him electric shock therapy. And I mean, he lived in a kind of a paranoia and fear from the abuse that he had taken from the system, and that's no way to live your life. And I mean, it still happens today. I have a good friend from Kenya, lives 30 miles away, who recently was beaten by the police for having a loud argument on the street. And he was beaten savagely and incarcerated, and even though he's an American citizen, he spent 10 days in jail, and they literally put him in almost like a torture device bag, and were beating him with batons. And he was slightly intoxicated, having an argument with a friend. He wasn't threatening anybody, he wasn't menacing anybody, they were just having a loud discussion. And in white America today, that's still something they want to make an example of. And the human rights violations that he incurred are fundamentally and intrinsically a sin against humanity. And if he gets the chance to get a decent lawyer, he has a case that he can really bring to the highest courts, because he was really violated in ways that, as white Americans, we would never, ever be victim to. So the Powell story is really one of great tragedy. But again, it just kind of echoes the greater overall tragedy of Black America. So 2 fun Norgran titles that I kind of filled out. And again, the politics in this issue, in this episode, you're going to get that from me at times. If you don't like it, feel free to watch all the other channels. You can talk about pressings and speakers and wires and all the other bullshit you want. I'm going to talk about politics and social issues and social values and ideology and human concepts and global viewpoints that are far reaching beyond the grasp of your nationalistic, politicized, and propagated viewpoints. If you don't fucking like it, you don't gotta watch it. You don't gotta make some comment, oh, I came here for the jazz and you talk. Go fuck yourself, dude. I don't care. I do not give a fuck. Go watch whatever the fuck you want to watch. You don't have to like it. It's my fucking channel. I'll say what I want to say from my soul, from my heart, from my mind. It comes out as it comes out. I don't script it. I don't write it. I don't plan it. It just is a stream of thought. And what my heart and my soul thinks, my voice will speak. That's what freedom looks like. That's what people died for. That's what people fought for. That's what you supposedly think you represent. And if you think that freedom is a concept that you value, then shut the fuck up and let me do my speak. And if you don't like it, start your own fucking channel and spew your own ignorant views all day long. And guess what? I won't fucking watch it, and I won't leave comments saying how much I think is bullshit you're talking about that shit. Because I don't care what you think or I want to say. You're free to think how you want to think. That's what freedom looks like. You're free to be an idiot. So, Loco, Trump, whatever the fuck your name is, I just wish you'd shut the fuck up. I mean, you don't really bother me, honestly, but I just think it's kind of insane that you consistently troll and post those comments and apparently even watch. Maybe you're enticed and allured by the things I have to say. Maybe you find that stuff absolutely moth to a flame. And you can't believe that how much what I say makes so much sense in spite of all the bullshit you're fed every day. And so you still gotta watch me because I'm the only truth you have in your life, maybe. I don't know. I sure wouldn't spend hours of my time watching some guy who I didn't agree with and commenting on his channel every week just for the fuck of it. I'm too busy. I got too much shit to do. So, I mean, lingo, loco, gringo, Trump, whatever the fuck you are. Last time I'm going to mention your name, I'm probably just going to block you pretty soon because I'm tired of your comments. Y'all be safe. Y'all be blessed. Y'all have a great day. Love your jazz. Understand what it means. It's not just cute little virtuosistic instruments playing some guy's chords and scales. It's the expression of a man's soul, giving the middle finger to the tyranny that occupies his life. Drum boogie, baby. Drum boogie, drum boogie. You ain't ready. Y'all ain't ready. Trust me when I say that. Y'all ain't ready. To the rest of you who love what I say and what I have to do, I mean, appreciate y'all for following the channel. If you want to support the channel, please subscribe. Hit the like button. Please support my Patreon. Send money through YouTube Thanks. PayPal is always appreciated. One-time donations. I do need help to keep this thing going. They just raised my mortgage via my business insurance and escrow and all that, almost $400 a month. And I'm trying to keep a smile on my face, but it's like, Jesus, motherfuck. It's tough. So I'm doing the best I can. Just trying to keep a smile and trying to keep moving forward. Y'all be safe. Have a great day. Peace.